Hello and welcome to Bible class. The past couple of weeks we've been talking about the resurrection, and that has been such a blessing to study that story. But now we're going to move back to the story of Elijah. Remember, we had just started learning about him right before we had to stop coming to school. And so we took a little break and did the resurrection stories, and now we're back on Elijah. So let's do just a little bit of review. This is found, the story of Elijah and his life is found in 1 Kings. The lesson today is found in 1 Kings chapter 18, okay? So keep that in mind. 1 Kings chapter 18. And if you remember, the wicked king was King Ahab and his wife Jezebel, remember? And they had introduced all these pagan gods, and the main god, the false god that they worshipped was who? Do you remember? It was Baal. Okay, he was a false god. And so the Israelites, so many of the Israelites were worshiping Baal that God said, I've had enough. And he sent Elijah to King Ahab to say there's a famine coming in the land. So for years it didn't rain, and Ahab wanted to kill Elijah. He hated him so much because he felt like Elijah had brought this curse upon their land. But we know, and Elijah knew, that this was from God. This was punishment because the Israelites were not obeying and worshiping the one true God. And the 10 Commandments plainly tell us, thou shalt have no other gods before me. So here we see Elijah. Do you guys remember this card? When he was by the brook Cherith, and the ravens were bringing him bread and food, and he had fresh water to drink. This is one way that God took care of him during the famine. Then after that, God sent him to the widow lady's house. Remember the widow lady with the one little boy, and all she had left was this little bit of flour and a little container of oil, and she was going to die. She was going to make that bread for she and her son, and they were going to die. But she had faith, and Elijah said, make bread for me and then for yourself. And as long as Elijah lived with the widow lady, she never ran out of food at all because God had blessed her faith. And so that's another way that God took care of Elijah, for his faithfulness and obedience to God. And he also took care of the widow lady. He was with the widow lady almost 3 years, and God supplied their needs because God is faithful and God is all powerful, and he can do that. Now God has given Elijah another assignment, and that assignment is to actually go back and find King Ahab and tell Ahab that rain is coming. So Elijah willingly goes, even though he knows that Ahab is looking for him and he wants to kill him. Now, at the same time that Elijah is traveling back to where King Ahab is also traveling, except he is doing something totally different. He's looking for grass for his horses. No, he's not worried about the people in his kingdom getting food and water. He's worried about his horses. That shows you what a wicked, evil, selfish man he was. And this man right here is Obadiah. Now, you may have heard of him before. Obadiah was a believer, and he believed and worshiped God. Even though he was a servant of Ahab, he still worshiped the one true God. And so Obadiah is helping Ahab look for grass for his horses so they do not die during the famine. So as they're traveling along the way, Obadiah goes a little bit ahead of Ahab, and who do you think he runs into? You've got it. He sees Elijah, and he says, Elijah, what are you doing here? You can't be here. King Ahab is looking for you. He's going to kill you. And Elijah said, oh, King Ahab's looking for me. Well, good, because I'm looking for him. And Obadiah says, no, you don't understand. He's going to kill you. And Elijah said, I'm not afraid of King Ahab. I have a message from God for him. So you tell King Ahab that I am looking for him. That's faith in God, isn't he? I think Elijah knew God had taken care of him this far. He was not going to fail him yet. And so they meet face to face. Truth was, Ahab was terrified of Elijah. He was terrified of him because he knew that he had God on his side. And he knew that in his heart, I believe he knew that God, our Jehovah God, was the one true God, and that this Baal, they weren't just false, and they were fake gods. And so he was a little bit afraid because he knew Elijah had said it wasn't going to rain, there was going to be a famine, and now it was coming. So here is what Elijah said. He said, I have a message for you from God, and I want you to meet me at Mount Carmel. Don't forget that, okay? Mount Carmel. And I want you to bring all of your prophets of Baal, all your preachers that preach about Baal being the one true God. Bring them all. There were 450 of them, by the way, okay? So Ahab said, okay, I will do as you say. And Elijah says, when you get there, I want you to have 2 bullocks and wood ready, because I'm going to show you something. So Ahab again did what he said, because he actually feared Elijah. And so they get to Mount Carmel, and here's Elijah, and he said, okay, we're going to build 2 altars. The first altar is going to be for Baal. The second altar is going to be for the one true God. And I am going to do the same thing with both altars. We're going to put the wood down on both altars, and then we're going to put the bullocks, 1 each on each altar. And then I'm going to let the prophets of Baal go first. And I want those prophets to pray down fire from heaven. The one, if Baal is the one true God, then let Baal is alive and well, then he can bring down that fire from heaven and light the sacrifice and burn it up. We will not set a fire. We're going to pray fire down from heaven. So they said, fair enough. And he even let the prophets of Baal go first. And so here they go. They shouted to their God. See the sacrifice laying up there, the dead bullock and the wood. And they're blowing instruments and waving their arms and screaming and shouting and dancing around, praying that Baal would send down fire. Do you think it happened? No. So Elijah kind of poked and prodded a little bit. He said, well, maybe you should try again, because maybe your God's asleep. Maybe he's taking a nap. Maybe he went on a trip, and he's going to have to get back to you because he's busy right now. So they prayed, and the longer it went in the day, the more upset these 450 prophets of Baal got. As a matter of fact, by noon, they had been doing it all morning. By noon, they were very upset, and they started cutting themselves. Imagine this, cutting themselves with knives and sharp stones, because they thought if they were bleeding, then surely Baal, their god Baal, would hear them. And you know what? It didn't happen. By 3 o'clock, now they've done this all day, nothing. Not one thing. And we know the Bible says that there is only one true God. Could Baal hear them? No. The Bible even says that people worship false gods, and they have eyes, but they cannot see, because they're not real eyes. They have ears, but they can't hear. They're not real ears, because Baal was not alive. He was just a carven, graven image. He was not the one true God. And we know that, and Elijah knew that as well. The sad thing was there weren't very many people on Elijah's side. Obadiah was a believer, and Elijah, but other than that, most of the Israelites had already turned to worship Baal, and God was not pleased with this at all. And so he's going to prove himself. So now Elijah says, it's my turn. And what do you think happens next? Well, guess what, third graders? You have to wait until next week to find out. Some of you already know, and we're going to talk about next week the rest of the story, okay? If you already know, then just keep it right there in your mind. Don't forget about it, and we'll come back to it next week, okay? Thanks for listening. You guys are great. Talk to you later. Bye.